recording now. Welcome everybody again after we finish housekeeping. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Suzanne Hug. Suzanne is a data-driven community leader. She's a mom of two, and she is our candidate for the Arizona House on LD 25. Today's town hall is called Creating a Sustainable Economy. Suzanne, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody for joining us today. This is such an important discussion, and it's something that's very, very personal to me. I recently ran across a picture of myself from high school. And in addition to being a little bit awkward, I was wearing a t-shirt with a picture of the earth as the center of a sunflower on it. And I was standing near a beautiful mountain lake in the Uintas, which are a mountain range in southern Utah. I remember proudly selling those same t-shirts to help save the rainforests when I was in middle school. It was something that I was passionate about because we had learned about how important our natural environment was to our own future and to a sustainable life that we could live as we grew up, right? As we had our own kids, as I now have my two boys, and as we think about the future and the generations, about how we can leave this world better than when we found it. I also remember at that time I have a book, and I found it just a few days ago, called 50 Things Kids Can Do to Save the World. And I think it was widely distributed. Some of you may have had the same thing. And it talked about, turn off the lights when you leave a room, turn up your AC a little bit more. Make sure you turn off the tap. There were little things that became lifelong habits for me. And they're the same type of things that I try to teach my kids. Every action that we take is important. And as a private citizen, that's something that I've always cared about and thought about. But now as I run for public office, I have to think bigger. I think about what kind of actions could I take that would impact all of our lives. Not just creating a good future for myself and my kids and my family, but for all of Arizona, and how we can be a role model for all of the United States and possibly the world. Arizona has a huge amount of opportunity. Being in a desert environment with the wonderful sun that we are offered, I think we should be the leader in solar. Also in that same desert environment, we should be the leader in water conservation and use. We need to be careful about these things and thoughtful now so that we can have a really bright future. So today we want to talk about infrastructure, jobs, and how sustainability really is not the opposite of prosperity. And sometimes we're led to believe that. There was last year a bill trying to be pushed by some real dark money backers trying to stop light rail expansion in Arizona. And they wanted to stop it for all time. And luckily, our voters saw the light. They wanted things to be more sustainable, to be better for us. And they pushed back in record numbers. With the 2020 election coming up, I expect those same record numbers to come out. Because what we have now is big, and it's going to be even bigger in the future. So taking action this year and every day in our lives, but also in the way we vote, is critical to building a future in Arizona that we can not only be proud of, but that is healthy and safe for generations to come. I'm so glad today to introduce my special guest, Peter Cullen. He is a small business owner like myself, as well as passionate about sustainable transportation, technology, and science, who has lived in Arizona for over a decade. His extended family has explored environmentally friendly technologies for generations. His household uses solar power and electric vehicles, always focusing on energy efficiency. So Peter, thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So tell me, exactly how long have you lived in Mesa?
I've lived in Mesa for about 3.5 years now. We moved down from Peoria, not too far.
And what brought you to Mesa?
Closer to work, closer to my wife's parents. Family support was really important to us.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I moved here for the schools about 7 years ago now. and it's a great place to raise a family. But I do think we have a little bit of work to do in the leadership department.
Yes, we do.
So tell me, why is sustainability important to you?
The most important thing to me about sustainability is producing just a better planet for our kids, extending the viability of our planet. You know, we hear these big dreams about colonizing Mars. We could do better here, preserving our planet here, taking care of what we have here. Mars sounds pretty cool, but we need to take care of us, take care of our community, take care of our world.
So I know that you have some electric vehicles. Tell us about some other ways that you've added sustainable elements to your life.
Um, well, EVs are probably the most visible way. We also have solar power, so we produce about half of our energy ourselves using rooftop solar. We've taken steps to make our home more energy efficient. A really easy thing for anybody to do is LED light bulbs. They use a lot less energy. They produce a lot less heat. We've insulated our attic, added insulation to the exterior of our home. There's different things just to make our only source of energy at our house is electric, so we don't have gas or anything like that. So any way that we could reduce how much electricity we're using, that's the primary things that we've done here. Um, that's primarily what we've done.
Okay. And so I appreciate your support in this election, but what do you want from me? What would you like to see done in government to help you?
Um, one of the things that people have a hard time with is having the availability or accessibility to sustainable things. You know, EVs can be expensive. Solar panels are expensive. Um, if there's ways to make those things more available, whether through tax credits or different government programs through the city, that would make them more available to more people, that would be really critical, in my opinion.
Well, and I know in previous discussions too, you've told me about how government has actually, or your utilities have held you back in your work towards sustainability.
Yes, so in the city of Mesa, we live in the district that has City of Mesa utilities. So we don't have APS or SRP for our power here. They do limit the size of solar systems in the City of Mesa utility area. So we're restricted, so we can only have a 5 kilowatt system that's turned on by the city. So changing that somehow, because that, while 5 kilowatts is substantial, a lot of times it's not enough. So while we produce half of our power, the city says I can't put more panels up to produce more. So even though we could, but we can't because the city says no.
And that's on your private property with your own money that you're being restricted from being able to do that.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking about that.
Sure.
Um, how how easy is it to use an electric vehicle in the city of Mesa or in Phoenix metro area?
When you have charging at home, it's incredibly simple. You know, I pull into my garage and I plug it in. The car knows when it's done charging and stops charging when it's done. So I get up every morning and my car is topped off and ready to go. I don't have to go to a gas station with those smelly tanks and stepping in gas puddles and or take the time to do it. It takes 10 seconds to plug the car in and just do it once a day, or even you could do it once every few days if you want. But you just top it off every night. It's always ready to go. It's extremely easy. And we have two electric vehicles. We have a long range Tesla, and we have an older model, or sorry, an older Nissan Leaf, which has a lot shorter range. But they both have their purpose.
Okay. Well, and that must be nice too. I mean, you don't have to follow what the gas prices are. Okay. When we have all of these shocks to the system, when there's a hurricane in the Gulf and the oil production goes down and the price of gas doubles. I mean, I remember well when it was almost $4 a gallon. And that was really hard on a lot of people. And I mean, we'd be kidding ourselves if we don't think something like that will happen again in the future. It's more a matter of when, not if. So you're really insulating yourself from those kind of price shocks by having electric vehicle.
Absolutely. So I did a little personal study on my expenses of electricity versus gasoline. So the amount that I drive over the course of 5 years, I'll save about $17,000 just from using electricity instead of gasoline. And that's averaging about 25,000 miles a year. So that's pretty substantial savings. And you really have to look at what you're consuming. So if you drive a lot, especially if you drive a lot, electric vehicles make a lot of economical sense once you get over the hurdle of the initial cost. The longer you own it, the more money you save over time. It's not just electricity, it's maintenance and things like that. You're not changing the oil every 5,000 miles. There is no oil to change. There's no transmission fluid. It costs a lot less to maintain. I've got 35,000 miles on our Tesla and I've spent $0 in maintenance. Nothing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, I have this vision of our public schools being really well funded, right? Like our teachers earning a living wage and our school buildings also being upgraded. One of the things I would really love to see is to have covered parking lots that are covered with solar panels. We have that at a couple of libraries nearby, Red Mountain Library near me. And I would love to see that for all of our schools, so that our schools then would have sustainable energy, our teachers and staff would have cool cars, but also if there is some kind of power outage, if there's an issue, they have their own power. So that if, we have grid issues, in the past, 2-3 weeks, I know our neighborhoods here in LD25 have lost power a number of times with the monsoon storms happening. And if we have the generation of that power on site and the batteries to store it there, then we could have our schools, our hospitals, a lot of our government buildings having their own power reserves. And I think that would be a much safer way to run our energy for the city and for the state. But talking about the savings that you have on your car itself, it also makes me really think about the fleets of vehicles that government's in charge of. How many hundreds of thousands, probably millions of taxpayer dollars could we save by converting to electric fleets? Not to mention the savings in pollution and those kind of external costs.
I've seen the city of Tempe, for example, has a lot of Nissan Leafs in their fleet. I've seen them. My business is in Tempe, so it's totally possible and totally feasible for a city government to utilize EVs for their vehicles.
That's great. Well, I think we may have some questions. Tanya,
Yes,
are we ready
we
for those?
do have, yes, and it's yes, and I think it's a great moment to ask. So Carol asks, Ms. Hug, whose budget would the funds come from to provide solar panels at school parking lots?
Great question. It's always important to talk about the budget, because we can have these pie in the sky ideas and dreams, but when it comes down to things too, we have to find ways to pay for them. I've been looking over budgeting and the different sources of funds that we have here in Arizona. And one thing I've noticed is that we have a lot of big polluters who aren't paying their fair share. An example is the mining companies in Arizona. Some of them are getting permits to mine on our national lands. They're just opening up in the Grand Canyon and places like that. And they're not being charged for the cleanup. That's something that's currently on the taxpayers' dollars. So as a legislature, I would make mining companies and those type of corporations pay for their own bills. Right? They need to take care of business. A lot of the mining companies also are getting free or very, very low cost water. And in an area where we need to be conserving water, I think they should be paying for that. The amount of revenue that would bring in would be significant. And then I would want to put those savings, which makes sense because it's conservation savings, into these type of sustainable energies.
Great. Carol, do you have any follow-up for that question? No. Oh, okay. Do you want to continue the conversation?
Oh, yes. I was going to say, I want to recognize too, in addition to having Peter as our special guest, I believe his father is in attendance today. So thank you, Mr. Cullen, for joining us as well. Peter, I know in your introduction, I mentioned that your family has been in sustainable technologies for generations. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, sure. So my grandfather was an architect by trade, and he has a home in Massachusetts, or had. He's passed for a couple of decades now. But when he built and designed that house, he designed into it a passive solar heating system. Essentially, if I get it wrong, my dad might correct me, but it captures heat from the sun, not traditionally like you see from PV systems for generating power that captures light. The system captures the heat, and then it spreads the heat through a concrete foundation in the floors, which then the heat radiates through the floors, and that's how they heat the home. So the home is solar heated. That system is, of course, that house is built about 40 years ago. That system is in disrepair, but it's just recently been replaced with a PV solar system just within the last couple of months, which now generates electricity for more than just heating. And then, of course, my parents themselves in Sun City have a solar system as well. My brother, who lives in Connecticut, has a solar system. My cousin, who lives in Cottonwood, Arizona, she has solar in her house. She actually has a very large solar system on her house. So, our family has been always been a big supporter of green energy, even going back 40 years ago through my grandparents. So it's pretty substantial.
What do you think would help other people get into that? Like, could we introduce them to solar and make it a little more accessible?
I think it's really important that we educate people about what solar is and what it does. I think a lot of people don't understand the cost benefit or the environmental benefit. For example, here in Mesa, our solar system is it's going to take a while for it to pay itself back. So we looked at it more from an environmental benefit. So it costs about the same to have our solar system as it does to have just power from the power company. But if we decided that if we can produce our own power and it's going to cost us the same, or even it saves us a little bit, then why not? And then in 12 years, when the system is paid off, we get 100% benefit of that power that we produce, and we no longer have to pay anything for the solar power that we produce, whether through the cost of the panels or the buyback from the city, which is very low. But to me, education, people just need to be educated about what it is, what it does, and how it benefits them.
Thank you. It's amazing how much information is lacking, I think, around sustainability. Sometimes I hear people say, like, well, if we want to do all this great stuff, it's good for the environment, but how is that going to affect our economy? And looking at it, it's like, if we don't have sustainable technologies, if we're using up our water and not replacing it, right? If we deplete our aquifers, we aren't going to have any kind of economy at all, because people won't be able to live here. Or the only people who will be able to live here are the ones who can drill private wells a half a mile down into the earth. Up in both northern Arizona and southern Arizona right now, people who just maybe have a 300-foot well are having those run dry. And one of the things they're finding out is that we have really big companies, sometimes not even based in the United States. There's a well-known one from Saudi Arabia, that are buying up a lot of the land and then farming water-intensive crops, because right now we don't regulate the water that's being pulled out. My opponent, Rusty Bowers, actually passed a law a couple of years ago now that said that even if you're pulling from an underground river that would go across multiple lands, that you shouldn't be taxed or charged or penalized in any way for that. So you can just pull as much water as you want. And we're seeing that now hurting Arizonans. People who have lived here for generations are suddenly having their wells go dry in the past 5 years. So this isn't even just a conceptual, like a nice to have. There are real critical issues that are hurting Arizonans right now that we need to be thinking about and protecting our natural environment.
I have a follow-up question from Carol that so for Suzanne, Carl says that would be a program that the state legislature would have to pass. And I guess following up on your answer and everything else that you both have mentioned, right? That would be a bill you would sponsor if we elect you to legislature in Arizona?
Yes. Yes, I would be happy to sponsor that bill and to talk to my colleagues about it. You know, something I'm learning is that it really just takes one person to bring an issue forward and then educate my colleagues. There's a lot of education, and I'm going to put that in quotes, done in the legislature by lobbyists, right? And lobbyists are paid by corporations. There's a lot of deep pockets. And frankly, legislators are busy, and I don't think that lets them off the hook of doing their own research, but I understand how it happens. And that's why having a seat at the table, I talk a lot about bringing balance back to the Arizona legislature, not just for LD25, because we've had two GOP representatives for a very, very long time. And I think it's really only fair to have a Democratic voice, somebody who's more moderate that can, you know, represent the many, many Democrats and independents living here in this area, but also somebody who's willing to bring fresh ideas to our legislature, something new, something big. You know, the worry is not in doing too much, it's in doing too little. You know, we're not going to act on climate change too quickly. It's, are we going to act on it too late? And so that is something, a bill that I really want to sponsor, in addition to helping to fix education funding and get a handle on the COVID crisis, because we're not going to have any kind of economy if we don't have public health. And I see sustainability really as part of public health too, but also economic health, that these things, they aren't competing agendas, that they all really move toward that same goal of having people be at the heart of our decisions, having our lives and our world improve because of government, not suffer because of it.
I think you just answered the other question that I got from a Facebook message that said, what would be your priority in the Arizona House regarding environment? So I think we can give that. We can say that that question is answered. I have another question for both of you, for both Peter and Suzanne. Some people are struggling to make ends meet. It's just not possible for them to buy electric vehicles. What can a normal average person do to take better care of the environment, and how would these actions that Suzanne mentioned benefit them?
Yeah, Peter, would you like to talk about just a few things you do every day that would be, you know, easy for anybody?
Um, I remember when I was a kid, my dad used to yell at me for not leaving or not turning the lights off. So I find myself doing that to my own children. It's really the irony. It's just the little things that we do on a day-to-day basis to just conserve. One thing that we do at our house is that we compost our organic matter. So vegetables, plant waste that we normally throw in the trash, it goes in the compost. Grass clippings, leaves. We do those little things, which those little tiny things can save as how much waste is going to landfill, the energy that it takes to move that waste. These little things add up. If everybody was composting, it would be amazing how much less trash would be going into the landfill. Little things about conserving water, just making we have dual flush toilets here, so it's one flush for half a flush and flush it twice for a full flush. Little things could save water. Conserving nozzles on your showers. These are really just basic things that can help make some kind of impact. I mentioned when we started LED light bulbs. It's the very first thing we did when we moved into our house. We weren't even in the house yet. I changed all the light bulbs out to LED. The price on those light bulbs have substantially come down over the last couple of years since we even did that. They're relatively cheap now to buy bulbs in bulk, and they save you a lot of energy. Those are some really basic things you can do on a day-to-day basis to decrease your energy consumption.
Thank you, Peter. You know, I think I'd love that this question talks about what if we don't have the money for a Tesla? Because for so many people here in LD25, that's the fact. We have a lot of people working the gig economy, and on average, income from the gig work has gone down 60% during this COVID crisis. So there are absolutely a lot of people hurting. You know, I'm very concerned about the unemployment insurance, that additional benefit. The 600 went away. Right now there's a 400, but there's reports that that money could be disappearing really soon too. We don't even know how long that will last. So I do want to acknowledge that there are a lot of people hurting right now and they care about the environment, but it can be hard to know what you can do. You know, we talk about electric vehicles, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an electric car. There are really great electric scooter options out there right now. And it's a couple $100, but you can charge it at home and it might get you somewhere a little bit faster. You know, if you only have to go somewhere that's a 10-minute drive, if that helps with your commute, if it can get you to the bus station and you're able to use a public transportation option. So I think that electric vehicles, we need to think about them in a bigger sense than just electric cars. I'm really pleased to see those electric scooters being more accessible for people, and especially if you're in an apartment, right? We don't all have a yard. If you do have a yard, like I have a push lawnmower and I really enjoy it. I'll go out in the morning. I get a lot of frustration out. But that's a simple thing I do because, you know, it doesn't use any gas, and it's really good for my lawn because it leaves the clippings there. So I compost as well. And for anybody watching who doesn't know, the city of Mesa has a great compost program where you can pay $5 to get a compost bin free of charge, or it'll be delivered to you and there's no monthly fee or anything. So it's just a $5 one-time charge. You can keep it forever. So anybody not doing that already, I've got 2 of them in my backyard and we do the same thing as Peter. Anything my chickens don't eat goes into the compost, grass clippings, that kind of stuff. So we can make a big difference. It also reminds me of, so when I was growing up, my parents did a foreign exchange and they hosted a woman from Germany. I say woman, she was probably 16. And she was recycling in ways that we are just starting to talk about. Right? Every time she would have a yogurt, she would wash out the little plastic cup and she would stack them together and say, okay, where do we put these? We have really great recycling programs in so many places. And we're far behind in that. For as progressive as we are in some ways, we're missing the boat. The US as a whole has been shipping our trash to China, and they've stopped taking it. And we need to start coming up with other solutions. And I think that could be a place where we create jobs, where we create industry, and we're doing it in a way that's helpful for us in our future. You know, I'm really proud to have the endorsement of the Sierra Club. And so I get their newsletter, I'm following them, and I have several people I talk with regularly who I'm discussing these matters with, because it is evolving along with the science. And that's one of the things I really believe in, is looking at the data, looking at the science, where are we hurting, and then what can we do in a way that's going to help Arizonans now and in the future.
If I could speak just a little bit more towards recycling. I don't know how the rest of the city is doing it, but the city of Mesa, where I live, our utilities are no longer recycling our recyclable materials. They're going to the dump. One of the big reasons is that the foreign markets are no longer purchasing our trash. And that was a big place where we were sending our recyclables. Others have to do with COVID and trying to keep their employees safe. So when our trash can is taken and it has recyclables in it, it goes to the dump. So we have to take that extra step to think about those single-use plastics. Do we really need to buy a 24-pack of water bottles at the store, or can we refill a 1 gallon or 3 gallon or 5 gallon jug and pour our own glass of water at home? You know, we just have to kind of make those conscious decisions about what we're purchasing and what kind of trash they'll produce when we're done using it, especially for single-use plastics.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. That is a great reminder. And I have another question for Suzanne from the chat. Daniel asks, speaking of public transportation, do you have any plans to push legislation to improve and extend mass transit in Arizona?
Thank you. And I want to make sure that I completely answered that earlier question about my priority in the House regarding environment, because I do believe we need to get that funding first. So my priority legislation would be to get those big corporations, especially mining, to start paying more into our tax base. That is the first thing, so that we can get those dollars coming in. And then once we have those, we'll be able to evaluate projects to see what is going to have the biggest effect right away that will help with sustainability and creating jobs. I think mass transfer is a great example of that. So I definitely would like to see, especially the light rail extended, but also making recharging stations available in a lot more areas. You know, I think right now that's kind of a barrier. Peter and I have talked about this earlier, that even if we get some tax credits for cars and you're able to get, say, a used hybrid or a used rechargeable vehicle, where are you going to charge that if you have an apartment, right? Where are you going to charge that if you can't easily park right next to your house, if you don't have a garage? These, a lot of people here don't have garages. I didn't for a long time. And so we need to be talking about this in a way that is really accessible to all levels of society. And I would like to start having more publicly available charging stations. So that's the first thing, is really, let's get the money coming in and let's get these big polluters paying for what they're doing. Because once there's a cost associated to it, we've seen them in other places suddenly get a lot better. And then we can start looking at these types of projects that we're discussing today.
I have, Carl has a follow-up comment for Peter. Carl says, thanks, Peter, for mentioning LED bulbs. That will be on my homeowners association's green committee's agenda. Good. As Peter says, education is important. However, individuals must help in education to others. Get your HOA to install solar and reduce water usage. Each owner within HOA would have to fund.
Yeah. HOAs can have a big impact, even like if we can get covers on pools to reduce evaporation, LED light bulbs in common areas. I didn't even think about it until Peter said it, but yeah, as our light bulbs went out over the past 5-10 years, we always replaced with an LED. And so it wasn't even really an additional cost. It was just a cost we would have had anyway. We put a little bit more in, but it's lasted us so much longer.
And, people don't have any problem with their HOAs paying for pools, so any kind of solar supplement to their communities could be very beneficial for everybody too.
Yes. Does anybody have any other questions? I finished with my questions from Facebook, but anybody would like to ask anything else to Suzanne or Peter regarding sustainability and the economy of sustainability?
Yeah, while we wait for some questions to come in, I think it's interesting too to just take a historical perspective of, I was thinking about the hippies, right? My mom was a hippie. She had the long hair all the way down her back. And, she'd go out and spend time talking to intellectuals on campus and listening to beatnik music where you snapped at the end. But there was definitely an awareness at that time, right, that Mother Earth was important. And I think it's interesting right now, as we have this crisis of the climate, that we're also in another civil rights era. And how are those connected? Because we know that climate change affects poorer communities more. This incredible heat wave that we're having, right, we're over 50 days of 110 plus, isn't just a fluke. And we need to be thinking about how can we help keep our cities cooler? How can we install urban canopies, more trees in the spaces that we're at? One of my friends from a training class, Casey Clowes, ran for Tempe City Council. And she's actually educating me about how urban canopies can reduce the overall temperature in cities. So it seems like kind of a big thing, but if we can put in, native trees that have low water usage and can create shade naturally, we can actually help to bring down the temperatures in our cities. And that helps a lot of people. Did we have anything else come in?
No, I think
I'm curious for Peter. I have a question for him.
Sure.
Peter, have you ever, do you ever get pushback for driving around an electric car? Or have you found friends through driving an electric vehicle?
Um, a little bit of pushback for driving an electric car. I do have a lot of friends that I've made because of them through different driving clubs and things like that. Um, the another common misconception, is that electric cars are so expensive. Our Nissan Leaf, for example, we purchased it on the used market. It is actually quite cheap to purchase a used Nissan Leaf on the used market. You might spend $30,000 new, but you can get one for less than $10,000 on a used market. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Teslas aren't quite the same, but we do get some pushback from other drivers. Have been flipped off. I don't know, maybe it was driving too fast, but but who knows? People can be aggressive. I've seen stories of trucks coal rolling electric vehicles. That's I don't know if you know what that is, but they put these emissions defeating devices on their vehicles to blow black smoke out of diesel trucks. That's pretty common. It's more common in the South, not so much. I don't consider us a South. We're Southwest, right? But it happens. I've seen it happen, and it hasn't happened to me personally, but I have friends that it's happened to that have electric vehicles. So it's really interesting to see how people do react to people driving electric cars. I would never drive one of those, but they don't, because they don't understand what they're all about.
That's so interesting. I have friends that also drive like Nissan Leafs or even Priuses, and they've said that they have more aggressive driving happen around them on occasion, and it tends to be pickup trucks.
Yep.
But how does me driving a sustainable vehicle threaten you as somebody who doesn't? I feel like there must be an acknowledgement there of some kind of guilt almost.
Change is hard, I guess. They want to sit and tinker with their gasoline vehicle. I'm not really sure what drives them. My car is really not customizable. I can't go and put a 6.2 liter Hemi in it. It is what it is. And I might be able to put different wheels on it, make it look a little bit different. But I don't know. I mean, some people just like things the way that they are, and they're threatened by change, even one that's so much better for the world overall. I don't understand it myself.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. It's just something I wonder. And if anybody on Facebook even knows, I'd love to hear some comments. I always want to get a broader perspective. I think education is so important on all of these different round pieces of the issue. Talking about solar panels, talking about electric vehicles, and talking about, water conservation too. So I appreciate the comment about the HOA, because we all have little different ways that we can influence our friends and our neighbors and bring these things up. And I think LEDs is a great challenge for anybody who's not using them yet. Maybe get a few and try them out. But as a state, we have so much potential and opportunity. I kind of want to start wrapping up the conversation a little bit with, what as a state in the next 5 years, what would you like to see us do? Let's say that we win in November and we have control of the House and the Senate here in Arizona, and we're able to pass some bills. As a Mesa resident, what are some of your priorities?
Excuse me, I have a dog's going a little bit crazy over here. Would you be able to repeat the question?
Yeah.
I feel guilty now.
Oh, no, you're fine. Kind of in the next 5 years, what would you like to see as a Mesa resident happening in your community?
In regards to sustainability? Mm-hmm. For me, primarily is the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. I think that it needs to start somewhere. We have a basis for public charging stations through private networks, but I think the city needs to take the lead on that and making just availability for charging networks to be available for everybody, to give everybody a choice. As someone mentioned earlier, the cost hurdle for electric vehicles can sometimes be too high, but if you're able to get over that, what's the next step? Also, how do you charge it? Where I live in Mesa, I live in North Central Mesa. There's a lot of apartment homes here, and the electric vehicles is just not a choice for them. So for me, in the next 5 years, we need to see that infrastructure fleshed out to give people choice in their options for vehicles. Because right now, it's people don't have that choice. It's I have to get a gas car because I have no other way to drive 20 miles to my job without being able to charge the car. So I think that's critically important, especially to the adoption of EVs, is having the infrastructure to back it up.
I have a couple of one question and one request from the chat. So this question is for Peter because lifestyle. Question for Peter: what temperature do you set your thermostat to?
77 is pretty normal for us. Just to give you an idea, Daniel, just recently we have an older block home in the Porter precinct here in Mesa. Just in the last couple of months, we had our block home insulated. What that did for us in the inside of the house, we had hot spots. So our bedroom on the east side of the house had 3 walls that were exterior walls, and it would get quite a bit warmer in there than it would in the rest of the house. We found it quite a bit difficult to keep a pretty consistent temperature throughout the home. So adding that insulation has really regulated the temperature from room to room. And I'm hoping that in the long run, it helps us regulate how much we're spending to cool the house. And we also have a smart thermostat that has different temperature sensors in the different bedrooms of the home. So the thermostat knows if nobody's in it. So if it detects that that room is maybe 2 or 3 degrees warmer and it's empty, it'll know not just to turn on the air conditioning, just to cool a room that doesn't need to be cooled. So that's another thing that we've done. That's an Ecobee thermostat, in case you're wondering. Google also has the Google Nest and different things, but Honeywell has options. But there's different ways that so I don't feel so guilty about keeping it at 77. I don't know if that's cool or not. I know when I first moved here from New England, it was dreadfully hot, and I would keep the AC at 72 because I just couldn't handle it. So over the years, I've adjusted that temperature upwards as my body has acclimated to the heat. My parents keep it at a balmy 85 degrees, I believe. It drives me crazy. It's a little bit too warm for me, but that's their choice, and their electric bill is very, very low with their solar power as a result. They barely pay anything every month in excess for electricity because of their conservative use, especially of air conditioning. Anyway, thank you for the question.
Thank you for the answer, Peter.
Now, Daniel needs to tell us what he keeps his AC at.
Oh, he says it here. We keep ours at 80 degrees.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah. He's obviously more acclimated to the heat.
I didn't scroll down far enough yet.
Okay, and this is a message from Carl to, there was first a message from Carl to Suzanne, and then another for Peter. To Suzanne: please sponsor a bill to fund companies to locate here in Arizona, companies that recycle plants materials to make products that bring in money to pay the recycle collection facilities. There is a movement to use chemicals to reprocess plastics into plastics for other uses. There needs to bills to encourage companies stop using plastics. Carl, I copied this part of the chat, and I have emailed it to Suzanne just for you to know that she has this information. And then, Suzanne, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I do want to respond. I appreciate the thoughts on that, Carol. And it reminds me of another question that I've had come up in some house parties that we've done, where people want to know about plastic bag laws. There have been some cities in Arizona where the people voted on them and wanted plastic bag laws, but because of the state legislature, they weren't able to have them. And there's an interesting thing I've seen happening in the legislature as I've been following it, is that they say, oh, the cities need to make decisions. The cities need to make decisions. But if we don't like that decision and we feel like it's too progressive, then we're going to stop it. and it's not just on the environmental, it's on regulating all sorts of things that are happening in the cities that make sense. We mentioned Cottonwood, Arizona. There are people getting priced out of their own homes because of an unregulated rental market up there. And Cottonwood and the people in that area understand what's happening. They understand the water that's available for housing up there and what it's doing to their local economy and society, but they're not allowed to make rules about it because of the state legislature. So I think that there has been some overreach at the state level that I would like to roll back to allow cities to really do what's best for them, but also experiment in ways, we need protections for, different groups, right? Non-discrimination protections. But beyond that, when it comes to commerce, when it comes to sustainability, these things need some more local control. And I really dislike that the state legislature has taken a heavy hand in stopping those kind of more progressive policies.
Thank you, Suzanne. And this is a follow-up for Peter from Carol too. And I think after this one, we will, it says right on Suzanne, city governments are being restricted by the state legislature, even on their spending. Yeah, so I will read the follow-up for Peter from Carol, and then I think we can wrap up to keep this under an hour. So Carol says, I have done a search for charging stations here in Mesa and found most within 4 miles of most any location. In the new multi-housing facility being approved by city is providing charging stations. When I tried to get our HOA to include them in recent new parking area, the condo board were unwilling to ask people to finance. That's a very resistant HOA you got there, Carol.
Well, I read the question already, and I kind of formulated my thoughts around it. This is a very good question. Charging infrastructure, you're right. Within 4 miles of virtually any address in Mesa, there is a charging station, but there's a big difference between charging stations. Most people don't realize. So you have AC charging, you have DC charging. DC charging is what's called a fast charge or a quick charge. You pull up, you plug in, 15 to 20 minutes later, maybe a half hour, you've got close to a full charge in your battery. Most of the charging stations in Mesa are not quick charge. They're an AC, what's called a level 2 charger that could take 8 to 10 hours to recharge your car. So if you live within 4 miles of a charger, you have to bring your car there, let it sit for 8 to 10 hours, and do you sit with your car? Do you get a ride home? What do you do in the meantime? Level 2 chargers are good if you plan on being there for a while, but they're not good, or if they're at your house because your car's parked in your home. But as far as having them out and about, it's not really practical. So there needs to be, I guess, when I spoke earlier, really what there needs to be more quick charging, more DC charging stations that allow people to. It's more of a function of like when you're pulling up to a gas station, you hook up. 10 minutes later, you've gone and grabbed a drink and you've left and you've filled your tank. As technology improves, electric cars, they're charging a lot faster. My Tesla will charge to 90% in about 20 minutes on a Tesla DC charger, which is very fast. On a level 2 charger, it takes 6 to 8 hours. But so if you have the charging stations, it is great, but you need to have fast charging stations so people can actually use them and get something out of them. And if they're going to be 4 miles from your home, that does pose a problem. How do you charge it? You have to sit with it for so long. And I also wanted to address your HOA board. Why don't you run for your HOA board? Suzanne's running for government here to make change in government. Your HOA seems to be pretty resistive to changes that could possibly benefit your community. Might be a good opportunity for you to maybe become part of that board so you could start helping to make that change. I know it's a lot to ask. It's just a thought.
Peter, you have a lot of great thoughts, and I want to thank you for joining me today as my guest, because also, you're a Mesa resident. You live in my district. I hope I have your vote. And
Yeah, of course you do.
Peter has a yard sign for me, so I feel like it's a pretty good shot.
I have a signed yard sign from you.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. But I wanted to just thank everybody else too for joining this conversation, for your questions. Thank you so much. You know, I think it can be so hard to get in touch with your legislators these days. And my campaign and who I am is about accountability and transparency. I don't want to just have these conversations now. I want you to follow up with me. I want you to hold me accountable when I'm in office. I want to be your legislator. To do that, though, it's going to take a lot of work we have less than 60 days now. So if you have a few extra hours, we have volunteer opportunities, make some phone calls, send some texts. And if you're able to donate, really appreciate that too. $10, $20 makes a huge difference in a local race like this. Sometimes I know national politics just seems too big, and sometimes it feels like your individual voice doesn't matter. But especially in these local races, they matter, and they matter to me. And that's why I want to be your representative. I want to help my family, but I've knocked on a lot of doors. I've had a lot of house parties, and I love meeting with you face to face, talking to you, having these conversations, and hearing about what your passion is, what's in your heart, and what you need to see in the future to have that hope and to have that vision that we can all live in a better place together. So thank you so much for attending. We'll be sharing some links. And also, if you have other questions, please feel free to put those in comments on our Facebook. I look at all of the questions that are asked during these events, and I'm happy to email you responses or message you responses because you deserve to have a conversation with the people who represent you. And that hasn't been happening for far too long, but it's time for that change. And when I say, it's time for fresh leadership, that's what I mean. You deserve a leader who treats you as a customer and a valued one. And that's who you are for me.
And thank you, Suzanne, for the invitation. I really enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And tomorrow we will have a watch party of this recording on Facebook. Feel free to post your comments there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Bye.